Right, message to mankind. We've screwed up the entire world, or I should say we've allowed the world to become screwed up. Why? Because we believe authorities. We have managed to believe everything we've been told for long enough that's provably wrong, easily provably wrong, harmful, painful, unpleasant, you name it, the worst of the worst. And why? Because people are too lazy or thick or anything else to believe that the authorities are lying to them, even though they can find out the evidence very quickly and easily. And even then, they're not interested. You show them the evidence, they don't want to know. We have suffered more under net zero than any other policy in my lifetime, and probably many other generations. If you look in history, the slight warming they've had in Roman periods, medieval periods, was actually beneficial. There were no floods, no droughts, no other things. It was just more food, fewer wars, fewer deaths from cold, less energy use, which is in the IPCC reports if you know where to look. But warming is always good in the past. No extreme weather. Nobody ever said that in science. It's only the media. Again, if you read the proper IPCC reports and certainly the associated graphs, you will see there's no connection at all between warming and extreme weather. And the sea level has risen 8 inches the last 2 centuries, and it's now set to rise 12 inches this century. You're not going to inundate very much with a sea level rise of less than a foot, as you didn't last century, which no one noticed. And there are pictures of sea levels around the world for 2 centuries of low-lying coastlines, Venice, Sydney, Miami, you name it, everything is exactly the same. All the piers, all the buildings, all the tides are just the same as they were 100 and 150 years ago. You're being lied to, and if the sea level is barely rising, it can't be warming much, can it? So does that justify turning down your heating, people dying of hypothermia, rationing your energy, having blackouts, having meat taxes, banning cars, and making children eat insects and worms? If it's evil, there is no excuse for it, and that's just the beginning of it. Because the lockdowns, it's all right, the cat's trying to open the drawer there. The lockdowns are the start of it, and of course, the whole purpose of all this evil is to wake people up. Because the reason everything has turned nasty in the last few decades is not because we're being overwhelmed by nastiness, it's because people were asleep and the alarm had to get louder and louder until enough people woke up. And it's not coming in one tone or another tone, it's coming every possible way. So basically the filth is rising to the surface, not to overwhelm and inundate us, but so we can clear it up. Here he comes. Here he comes. He's not sure. Anyway, so the whole purpose of it is that we're being overwhelmed by evil so we can clear it away. And because different things wake up different people, the lockdowns, in fact, were the greatest wake up call for many, but it hasn't woken everyone up completely. It's like your infant school exam, your infant school lesson. So there are people who are very upset with the lockdowns but still believe other nonsense. So it's coming in other ways. So apart from obviously ruining people's lives for a virus which no other virus in the world, which were much worse, has ever been responsible for even more than a short local lockdown. This was a world lockdown for over a year. And parts of the world are considering going back into it, so we've got something to worry about now. Not for the virus, but for the fact that they want to lock you down. And if you go into the documents that come from the World Economic Forum and their associates, they say this is a good preparation for a permanent climate lockdown. So it was just a dry run. So the net zero is going to have you in an open prison and a living hell for the rest of your lives if you allow this to carry on. Because when will people wake up and say this isn't for our benefit? Do they have to take one of your children? Do they have to have a voluntary, not a voluntary, an involuntary point where you're too old and they cut your life off because you've reached a point where you're emitting too much carbon dioxide? Of course, net zero means net carbon dioxide zero. Now, the trees need carbon dioxide to grow and produce oxygen. What creates the most carbon dioxide? Well, you talk about 400 parts per million. Animals exhale 40,000 parts per million of CO2. So it's quite obvious what they want to reduce is the animal life, specifically the human beings. And they're now reducing farming to keep the CO2 emissions down. So they're going to ration food, ration anything they can, and blame it on that. So how evil would you like them to be before you realise that it's impossible to stop anything bad happening by doing something even worse? Never was right, and it never will be right. But it comes in all different flavours and colours. So the first thing that more people are rejecting than anything else is that you can change your sex. Now, when I was about 7 years old, they had a big picture, an article in the Observer magazine of a woman pin up on the front of it saying, "This woman is the first person to change sex." Now, being 7 years old, I thought, oh my goodness, this is interesting. And I looked at the article. It turned out she hadn't changed sex. It was just a man who had had various cosmetic procedures done, and he was still a man with nasty scars all over his body, which they'd nicely made up so you couldn't see them, covered up with bras and things. So that's not real. And when you get people in the mainstream saying you can't change sex, you know that you have hit a nerve, because you don't need a peer-reviewed paper to tell you can't change sex. It's something a 5-year-old would know. And when I was 7 years old, I thought, oh well, it might be possible, but of course I read the details, and even a 7-year-old at that time, it's very obvious, no, you can't change sex, end of. But we've still got the sex change people who believe in climate change, because the difference between the sex change and climate change is the sex change is binary, yes or no, obviously wrong, but climate change is a wee bit more complicated, and it's easier to trust hundreds of scientists and all the politicians, even when you can find out virtually every claim they have made is wrong just by looking it up on the internet. So we have to get a certain weight of people behind us before all this goes away and we clear it away forever. So this is the end times, literally, whether it's spiritual or not. We are clearing away the filth, because the filth is completely surrounding and piling up on top of us so we can't breathe. So the sex change people are one lot of people, but they aren't being woken up fully if they still believe in the other stuff, but they are at least slightly come over from the dark side, but not well enough to graduate. But the lockdown people are often putting two and two together and realising that if that's wrong, then that's wrong, then that's wrong, and they've been woken up fully and they're on our side. And we just need the army to be big enough and it will go away on its own, because you shine a light on the darkness and you see it. It only works through deception and false consent. You take away the deception, the consent will go with it. So it's that simple. Now, people are stimulated in visual ways. So, for example, you get these people with the tattoos on their face and the piercings all over it, and these huge holes in their ears and metal plates and rings and things in them. Now, if you look at any picture of demons going back thousands of years, they all look like that. They're making themselves permanently look like demons. Now, you've got the victims here, who are the individuals who are being operated on, and the perpetrators, who are the people doing the operations. So, going back to our sex change, if you get a man's perfectly healthy equipment, lop it off, make it into a hole, align it with rectal tissue. If there was any other reason, if they did that without that particular reason, you would say it's disgusting and they should be locked up and lose their medical license. Yet they do it every day, make loads of money out of it. So you've got the leaders, the perpetrators who are doing it, and the followers. So they're all possessed by evil, but some are passive and some are active, because the evil works in different ways. It tells people that they're in the wrong body. Now, how can your awareness be gender or sex? It's not your body. Your awareness doesn't have anything. You're just aware of life itself, of existing, of being alive, and everything you see coming and going. You can't be aware of your body, because if you close your eyes or look ahead, you can't see it. You don't know what your body is. You can't feel like your body. You just feel like you're aware. So to con somebody, to encourage them, oh, you're the wrong sex, we're going to spend a few days in surgery and chop all your bits off, and we're going to have a nice car or holiday or pay our children's school fees from the proceeds of it if we do enough operations in a week. Does that look right to you? So the same thing goes for these people that, they'll sit down in somebody's surgery for a couple of hours and have ballpoint pen etched on their face so it's there permanently to make them look like a demon. And they stick these pieces of metal and cut holes in their face and they don't even need to be qualified to do it. Isn't something wrong there? Haven't you noticed there's something wrong with these people? The people that are doing it are possessed, and the people that are having it done to are possessed for asking them to do it. But the people who are in charge and carrying the knife are the ones who are really evil, because not only are they carrying out harm on people, they are getting paid for it and they're getting pleasure from it because they're going home and doing their weekly shop on what somebody else has given them to drill a hole in their face. Think about it, it's quite obvious. So there are many examples of this. I could go on, but you've got the picture, you've got enough of it. Are you going to turn around and say we've been lied to enough, we've been had enough? There are shibboleths, which are words which are not possible to say if you're not the enemy, because the enemy said Sibboleth because it didn't have a sh in its language. So if your enemy says climate change or net zero, or if somebody says it, they're your enemy. Whether they believe it or whether they're lying, they're still your enemy, because you can't have a leader without thousands of followers, because the leader on their own is not enough. You've got to have the useful idiots. You've got to have your army of morons. Therefore, if somebody says it, they're either a perpetrator or they're an idiot. Keep well away from them, because they are not your friends. They don't want to help you. They don't want to do anything nice or good. They are going to try and destroy your life. And there's no point giving them facts or figures or anything else, because they take no notice and they insult you, or worse, or try and get you into trouble. So when you have countries now making it illegal to not just say what I've just said, you can't change sex, but to actually misgender somebody and say to an individual, no, you're not a woman, you are a man, and use their men's name, you'll be locked up. Canada, Ireland, Spain, this is happening all over the place. And the illegal immigration, just to allow millions of foreigners, random foreigners, into your country for no reason except that you're allowing them in and spending all your money on putting them up instead of sending them back where they come from. And they're bringing in TB and diphtheria. Why is that happening? Never used to happen before. Somebody turned up before Tony Blair arrived on our shores. They'd be picked up one by the Coast Guards or the Navy, chucked away, and get their fingerprints, send them on the next plane back. Now they're all being welcomed into our hotels and we're spending millions of pounds a day looking after them. There's something very wrong here. So whichever nastiness floats your boat and sets you off, that is the thing that you need to be woken up. It's all connected. All of this is designed to not overwhelm society and the Western world into being destroyed, but to make people realise that if we allow it, we will be destroyed and there's no coming back. So it's our job to see it and reject it, and that alone, enough weight behind it, it will be gone, because there won't be enough people to keep it going, because people won't believe the authorities anymore. They'll know they've been lied to, and there's nothing better than a convert. Once somebody who believed these bastards are actually there to help you when they're not your friends, they are your mortal enemies, they will not take any more, and they won't let their family take any more, and they won't let the media or the politicians or anyone else. They'll all be kicked out and cleared out, and a new system where it can't happen again will replace, and it can't happen again, because even the stupidest people aren't going to be fooled twice, and if they are, there won't be enough of them to matter, because most people come out of the process. Waking up is a one-way street. People do not get stupider and more ignorant over time. They learn more and become more mature, so they won't be slipping back in any numbers to make it significant. So I hope this message has been nice and clear, and some or all of it makes sense to you, and pass it round and let people know, because we only need a certain number of people in the world to believe this, to understand this, and we will beat the system for good. Thank you and good night.